Before every great breakthrough, every towering company, every movement that reshaped the world, there was a moment when someone decided to stop talking about what could be and started building what would be. The world has never been moved by intentions. It has only ever been transformed by execution. Today, we live in a time where it's easier than ever to talk, to plan, to appear busy. But the truth remains, only builders create the future. Only builders leave fingerprints on history. When I say everybody has ideas, I mean everybody. You can walk down any street, sit in any barbershop, scroll through any corner of the internet, and you'll hear people talking about what they could do, what they might do, what they're planning to do when the timing is right, when the money shows up, when somebody finally believes in them. But ideas are like unlit sparks. They don't become fire until someone steps forward with the courage to strike the match. And that courage doesn't come from talking. It comes from building. I've seen people protect their ideas like they're priceless jewels, when in reality, the value doesn't come from the idea at all. It comes from what you do with it. The world isn't changed by the people who whisper brilliance to themselves. It's changed by the ones who take that brilliance and give it form, something real, something touchable, something undeniable. And when you start building, even if it's messy, even if it's unfinished, even if it's far from perfect, you're already ahead of the people still sitting around explaining what they would do if life would just hand them the perfect situation. People get addicted to the sound of their own plans. Talking gives a quick hit of satisfaction, a little taste of what success might feel like. You tell someone your idea, they nod, they hype you up, and suddenly you feel like you've accomplished something. But that feeling is temporary. It's a performance. Building, though, that's real. Building wakes you up early. Building forces you to face every flaw, every weakness, every limitation inside you. Building demands sweat, hours, heartbreak, revision, patience, faith. And yet, building is the one thing that separates those who dream from those who create. And I'm telling you this because I've lived it. I know what it feels like to look at a blank page, a blank room, a blank world, and decide that silence isn't enough. I need to fill it with something that didn't exist before. When you start building, you start discovering who you really are. You learn what you're made of. You meet parts of yourself you never met in the comfort of conversation. And you begin to understand that ideas aren't gifts from the universe, they're invitations. Invitations to rise, to act, to bring something impossible into reality with your own hands. You don't need permission. You don't need applause. You don't need the perfect moment. The perfect moment is the moment you take the first step, because once you build the first piece, the second comes easier. Once you taste progress, even in the smallest form, you start to crave more. That craving is momentum, and momentum is how ordinary people do extraordinary things. You want to change your life, you want to impact the world, then stop describing what you're capable of and start showing it. At the end of the day, talk doesn't leave a legacy, work does. You ever notice how talking can trick you? You start describing your big vision, laying out all the plans, telling people what you're about to do, and for a moment, just a moment, you feel like you already did it. That little rush, that little spark, that little hit of validation, it's dangerous. It makes you comfortable. It creates this illusion that progress happened when in reality nothing moved. Not one brick was laid, not one line was drawn, not one seed was planted. It's like standing in a studio bragging about the album before you ever record a single track. The world can't hear your intentions. It can only hear what you actually put down. People love to talk because talking is easy. Talking lets you stay in the dream without stepping into the work. You can paint the picture with your words and never face the fear of trying to bring it to life. You can stay clean. You can stay unchallenged. But every time you choose to talk instead of build, you're feeding a version of yourself that survives off fantasy instead of discipline. And the thing about fantasy is this: it doesn't grow you. It doesn't sharpen you. It doesn't push you. It just keeps you still while the world keeps moving. And I get it, talking feels good. It's a performance. You tell someone what you're planning, and they look at you like you're already halfway there. They clap for an idea they've never seen, never tested, never touched. And that applause, that little bit of love can become addictive. But applause for a plan is empty. Applause for a result, that's earned. When you talk too much, you start living in the reaction instead of the creation. You start chasing the feeling instead of the outcome. And the more you talk, the harder it becomes to actually start, because the version of yourself you've sold to others becomes bigger than the work you've done to back it up. Let me tell you something real. Every minute you spend talking is a minute you're not building. Every conversation about what you will do is time stolen from what you could be doing. And time is the one thing you can't get back. You don't want to look up one day and realize you spent years announcing a destiny you never created. There is no artistry in that. There is no legacy in that. Legacy comes from action, quiet action, consistent action, unglamorous action. When you stop talking and start doing, you break the spell. You cut through the comfort. You take away the illusion and force yourself into reality. And reality is where everything beautiful and powerful and transformational actually lives. When you build instead of talk, you earn clarity. You earn momentum, you earn mastery, and you earn respect not because of what you said, you earn it because of what you made. So don't let your voice get louder than your work. Let your work speak first. Let your work speak loudest. Let your work speak for you. Momentum is a strange thing. It doesn't show up at the beginning. It doesn't introduce itself. It doesn't wait for you to be ready. It only arrives after you take that first uncomfortable, unglamorous, uncertain step. People think momentum is this dramatic force that sweeps you up and carries you forward, but really, it's more like a whisper that grows louder each time you act. The problem is most people never take that first step. They keep waiting for motivation, inspiration, some perfect surge of energy that makes starting feel easy. But ease isn't the birthplace of movement. Action is. You ever notice how heavy the beginning feels? The first sketch on the pad, the first draft that looks nothing like the vision in your mind, the first rehearsal where nothing sounds right, the first call, the first email, the first brick, it all feels slow, awkward, almost too small to matter. But that's exactly how every masterpiece starts, not with brilliance, not with speed, with a beginning. And when you honor that beginning, when you choose to do the small thing instead of talking about the big thing, something shifts. You're not just imagining anymore, you're creating. And creation, even in its tiniest form, breathes life into the next step. The truth is, momentum doesn't care how you start. It only cares that you do. You could move an inch, a centimeter, a fraction of a thought into reality, and momentum will still find you. Because momentum respects effort more than perfection. It grows from consistency, from showing up even when you're tired, even when the world is loud, even when doubt is trying to pull you back into the comfort of imagining instead of producing. Every day you return to the work, you're stacking energy, you're building a rhythm. You're teaching your mind and your spirit that movement is your language. And once momentum starts rolling, everything changes. Decisions come faster, ideas connect easier, confidence rises, opportunities show up that you couldn't see from the starting line. People begin to feel your energy before you even say a word. The work starts working for you. The path that felt impossible suddenly feels inevitable. It's not magic, it's momentum. And the wildest part is that it's always within reach. It's not reserved for the chosen or the lucky or the blessed. It belongs to anyone willing to move. But you have to protect it. Momentum is powerful, but it's not permanent. If you stop too long, the energy cools. If you talk more than you act, the motion fades. If you let doubt drown out discipline, you lose the rhythm you worked so hard to build. That's why builders keep moving. They know momentum is sacred. They know that success doesn't come from one big leap, but from 1,000 small movements that build a force nothing can interrupt. And when that force is on your side, when momentum is carrying you, you stop chasing your vision and start walking in it. So take the first step. then the next one, then the one after that, because motion creates power. You ever notice how the world doesn't lean in for the person who A, intends to do something, only for the one who actually does it? That's the reality nobody wants to say out loud. You can have the biggest dreams, the deepest passion, the most poetic explanations of what you're about to create, but none of that gets you respect. None of that earns you trust. None of that builds anything real. People respond to results. They respond to what they can witness, touch, feel, experience. And it's not because the world is cold, it's because the world has heard every version of every promise 1,000 times. What separates you is not how big your ideas are, but how bold your execution is. There's this belief that if you talk about your greatness enough, people will start believing it. But belief isn't something you convince people into, it's something you prove. When you show up with something you've built, something you carved out of nothing, people don't have to be persuaded. They don't have to be convinced. They can see the truth for themselves. That truth has weight. It has presence. It has a heartbeat. And people can feel that heartbeat long before they understand the story behind it. You can tell people you're disciplined, but discipline becomes real when they watch you show up again and again with work that's sharper, deeper, more intentional. You can tell people you're visionary, but vision becomes real when they see you create something that didn't exist before you touched it. You can tell people you're dedicated, but dedication becomes real when people witness the results of hours nobody else saw you put in. Results speak the language the world listens to. They don't need translation. They don't need translation. They don't need explanation. They don't need decoration. They stand on their own. And here's the thing, results don't lie. Talk can pretend. Talk can stretch the truth. Talk can trick people for a moment. But results expose who you really are. They show your strengths, your weaknesses, your growth, your evolution. They show your courage. When you build something, even if it's not perfect, even if it's not polished, even if it's not the final version of your genius, it still holds more power than a lifetime of speeches about what you could have done. Because the world respects action. The universe respects movement. Life respects the person who shows up with evidence. And sometimes people won't believe in you at first. Sometimes they won't understand. Sometimes they won't cheer. That's fine. That's part of it. Because the moment you start producing real results, the moment you start placing something undeniable in front of them, everything shifts. Silence turns into curiosity. Curiosity turns into attention. Attention turns into respect, and respect turns into influence. Not because you talked your way into it, but because you built your way into it. So don't waste energy trying to convince anyone of who you are. Build something that makes it impossible for them to doubt it. Mastery doesn't happen in your mind, it happens in your hands. You can study something forever, analyze it from every angle, talk about it like you've lived it, but until you actually step in and start doing the work, you'll never feel the weight, the texture, the truth of what it really demands from you. People think genius is a gift, like it just drops out of the sky and lands on certain people. But genius is really just the willingness to wrestle with the work long enough for your skill to catch up with your vision. And that only comes from doing, not dreaming, not discussing, not preparing, doing. You learn things in action that you will never learn in theory. When you pick up the tools, when you sit at the desk, when you place your hands on the craft, something happens that reading or talking can't teach you. You start noticing details you didn't see before. You start understanding the nuances, the parts that look simple from the outside but reveal their complexity once you're inside the process. You start realizing how much more there is to learn, not in a discouraging way, but in a way that pulls you deeper, makes you hungrier, sharpens your focus. And the beautiful thing is, the more you build, the more the work begins to shape you. It trains your eye, it develops your taste, it gives you patience, it teaches you humility and ambition at the same time. You start seeing your mistakes as part of the journey, not as proof that you're not good enough. because mistakes inside the work are different from mistakes in your head. They're not failures, they're feedback. They're signals guiding you toward mastery. You learn faster by messing up in motion than by staying perfect in theory. Every creator, every builder, every innovator who ever reached a high level didn't get there by talking about their craft. They got there by putting in hours when nobody was watching. They got there by failing in private, adjusting in silence, and improving without applause. They got there by pushing through those moments where the work didn't match the vision, those moments where most people quit, because mastery lives past that point. Mastery begins where comfort ends, and this is where a lot of people get stuck. They want to master something before they start. They want the confidence before the repetition. They want the skill before the struggle. But the struggle is the training ground. The discomfort is the sharpening stone. The repeated attempts are the classroom. You don't wait for mastery to show up. You build it one imperfect action at a time. Mastery comes from stepping forward before you feel ready and trusting that your readiness will rise to meet your movement. The more you build, the more you realize that mastery isn't a finish line. It's a relationship. It's you showing up to your craft day after day, giving it attention, respect, curiosity, and courage, and the craft responds by revealing deeper layers of itself, inviting you further into your potential. That's something no amount of talking will ever unlock. So put your hands on the work and let the work build you. When you actually start building something, the truth shows up, not the dream version you drew in your mind, not the polished version you bragged about, but the real version, the one that forces you to see what's working and what's not. Action has this way of stripping away illusions. You think you know exactly how your idea will unfold, how smooth the process will be, how perfectly everything will connect, and then the moment you start, the idea starts talking back to you. It reveals its gaps, its rough edges, its hidden strengths. It shows you everything you couldn't see from the sidelines. That's why people avoid starting. They're afraid the reality won't match the fantasy. They're afraid the vision they love in their head won't look as beautiful once they touch it. But that's the whole point. The vision is supposed to evolve. It's supposed to sharpen. It's supposed to get challenged. You can't refine something you refuse to build. You can't improve something that only exists as a dream. When you take that first step, when you make that first version, even if it's messy, you're giving the idea permission to grow into what it's actually meant to be. And the crazy part is the flaws you discover are not failures, they're guidance. They're direction. They're the universe telling you where to adjust, where to push harder, where to rethink, where to innovate. Every mistake is a message. Every obstacle is a map. Every limitation you bump into is a doorway to a better version of your idea, a better version of your process, a better version of you. Talk can't reveal that. Planning can't reveal that. Only building can. You learn more in 1 hour of doing the real work than in 10 hours of sitting around imagining the perfect outcome. Because once you're in motion, everything becomes clearer. You see the parts that matter more than you thought. You see the parts you can let go of. You see new pathways you didn't even know existed. You get inspiration that only shows up in the presence of execution. Building is a conversation with reality, and reality always tells the truth. And that truth is a gift. It keeps you honest. It keeps you adaptable. It keeps you humble enough to learn and confident enough to continue. Vision isn't supposed to stay rigid. It's supposed to breathe. It's supposed to shift. It's supposed to meet the moment and rise with you. That only happens when you stop protecting the idea and start exploring it. People think clarity comes first, but clarity is the child of action. You don't need to have everything figured out before you start. Starting is what helps you figure everything out. You don't need to see the whole picture. Just take the step that reveals the next piece. So don't be afraid of what building will show you. Be afraid of never discovering what your idea could have become. Silence is one of the most powerful tools you can have when you're building something real. Not because you're hiding, not because you're unsure, but because silence creates a space where the noise of the world can't reach you. When you stay quiet about your process, you protect your vision from voices that don't understand it yet. You protect your momentum from opinions that don't carry any weight. You protect your focus from distractions that want attention but don't deserve it. Silence becomes a shield, and inside that shield, you get to work without interference. The world today is addicted to broadcasting everything. People feel pressure to announce every move, every step, every plan before it's even born. They want validation before the work exists. But every moment you spend talking about what you're doing pulls energy away from actually doing it. Silence gives you that energy back. It keeps your power concentrated instead of scattered. It lets you build in peace, in depth, in truth, without having to perform for anyone. And when you work quietly, something else happens. You start hearing yourself more clearly. You hear your instincts without the echo of someone else's doubt. You hear your creativity without the interruption of someone else's opinion. You hear your purpose without the static of the crowd. You start trusting your own rhythm. You stop needing permission. You stop waiting for applause. You become the one guiding the work instead of allowing the world to steer you. Silence also protects you from premature judgment. People love to evaluate something before it's ready, before it's shaped, before it's grown. They'll try to define it too early. They'll try to limit it before it becomes what it's meant to become. When you stay quiet, you give your creation the time it deserves to develop fully, to grow roots before it grows branches. Then, when you finally reveal it, it's undeniable. It's strong, it's real, it stands on solid ground. Working in silence also keeps your ego in check. There's no performance, no audience, no clapping. It's just you and the work. And that kind of honesty, raw, private, unfiltered, is where real mastery is built. You learn what you're capable of when nobody's watching. You learn discipline, resilience, patience. You learn how to keep going even when nobody is cheering. That's where the greatness gets shaped. And the beautiful thing about silence is that people feel the results louder later. When you show up with something complete, something true, something powerful, the silence that came before it suddenly makes sense. They see the depth, they see the intention, they see the craft. It hits harder because it wasn't over-explained, it was delivered. So don't be afraid to disappear for a while. Don't be afraid to go quiet. Don't be afraid to let your work grow without an audience. Let the world talk, let the world guess, let the world wonder. Because when you're ready, the work will speak in a voice stronger than anything you could have said along the way. People get inspired by what they can see, not what they hear you say you're going to do. You can talk about your plans all day. You can paint the most beautiful picture with your words. You can hype up your intentions until they sound like destiny, but none of it hits as hard as showing people something real, something finished, something you created with your hands, your time, your discipline, your sacrifice. When you produce something that stands on its own, something that doesn't need you to explain it or defend it, people feel that. They feel the weight of it. They feel the truth of it. And that truth moves them in a way no speech ever could. You ever notice how people react differently when you bring them something tangible? You're not asking them to believe anymore. You're giving them proof. You're giving them something they can experience, something that forces them to take you seriously. And once they see the work, their energy changes, their attention sharpens, their support becomes real. Inspiration born from results hits deeper because it's grounded in what is, not what might be. And that's why building matters so much. When people witness progress, they connect with it, they relate to it, they respect it. They feel motivated because they see someone who didn't just dream, they executed. They see someone who made something from nothing. And that example lights a fire in people. It shows them what's possible. It gives them a blueprint. It gives them permission to believe in their own abilities. That's the kind of influence that lasts. People don't follow talk, they follow movement. They follow consistency. They follow the person who shows up again and again with something new to offer. And when your work starts speaking for you, you don't have to beg for support. You don't have to convince anybody. You don't have to prove yourself in conversations. The work becomes the proof. The work becomes the messenger. The work becomes the voice. And the more you build, the stronger that voice becomes. You start to inspire without trying. You start to lead without announcing. You start to shift the people around you simply by doing what you were already called to do. That's the power of results. They travel, they echo, they influence rooms you've never stepped into. They create opportunities you didn't even know existed. The world starts to move in your direction because you put something real into it. But it starts with discipline. It starts with being willing to create before anyone is watching and continue creating even when nobody is listening. It starts with valuing your craft enough to let it grow in private until it's strong enough to speak loudly in public. And when it does, when your work finally touches the world, it speaks with a force that no amount of talking could ever match. So let your results be the reason people believe in what you do next. Character is something you can't fake. You can dress it up with confidence. You can hide behind big talk. You can perform like you've got everything under control. But the moment you start building, the truth of who you are comes out. The work exposes you. It shows you your limits. It shows you your habits. It shows you whether you're disciplined or distracted, whether you're consistent or inconsistent, whether you're committed or just curious. And that's what makes the process so powerful. Building doesn't just create something outside of you. It creates something inside of you. It shapes you. When you really commit to creating something, you step into a different kind of struggle. It's not the struggle of dreaming, it's the struggle of doing. And doing demands more from you. It demands patience because nothing great moves as fast as your imagination. It demands resilience because you're going to hit walls you didn't see coming. It demands honesty because the work will show you everything you still need to grow through. And every time you face those demands, you become stronger. You gain more depth. You develop more maturity. You earn more self-respect. You start to recognize yourself as the person capable of carrying the vision you once only spoke about. People think character is built in the big moments, but it's actually built in the quiet ones. Those nights when you're tired and tempted to quit, but you show up anyway. Those mornings when nobody is texting you for updates, nobody is checking on your progress, nobody is cheering, but you still get up and work. Those seasons where you feel unseen, uncelebrated, maybe even misunderstood, yet you stay loyal to the craft, that loyalty builds you. That loyalty turns discipline into instinct, and instinct turns work into something spiritual. The more you build, the more you realize the journey is not just about creating a product or achieving a goal. It's about who you're becoming on the way there. The setbacks give you grit. The repetition gives you confidence. The failures give you wisdom. The wins give you humility because you know how much it took to get there. Every step in the process is shaping your character like a sculptor with a block of stone. You start becoming more precise, more intentional, more aware of your power and your weaknesses. You learn how to move with purpose instead of impulse. And the world might not see that growth right away, but you feel it. You feel how your mind is sharper. You feel how your spirit is steadier. You feel how your habits are stronger. Building gives you a kind of inner strength you can't get from talking, dreaming, or planning. It's the strength that comes from showing yourself over and over again who you really are and who you're becoming. And that's why the process is sacred. It's not just about what you make. It's about the version of you that gets made along the way. So put your whole self into the work because the work is putting something priceless into you. The people who change the world aren't the ones who sit around talking about what they might do someday. They're the ones who pick up their ideas and start shaping them, no matter how impossible it seems at first. Every invention, every movement, every shift in culture began with someone deciding that action mattered more than words. They chose to create when others were still planning, dreaming, or waiting for permission. And that choice, that commitment to building, is what separates the people who leave marks from those who leave conversations. Building is risky, it's uncomfortable, it exposes you. When you build, you put your ideas, your vision, your creativity out into the world in a form that can be judged, critiqued, even rejected. But that exposure is exactly what makes it powerful. When you act, you take a piece of yourself and put it somewhere tangible. You make something real that people can experience, interact with, and respond to. That's how influence spreads. That's how legacies are created. That's how the impossible becomes possible. Talk doesn't have that power. Action does. And here's the thing, the world rewards those who produce. Not immediately, not always in the way you expect, but eventually the impact shows itself. Every brick you lay, every project you finish, every problem you solve adds to a chain of influence that grows bigger than you. Other people notice it. Other people are inspired by it, and that influence, that ripple can change lives, communities, industries, even the course of history. It all starts with the choice to stop talking and start building. Building also teaches lessons that no amount of discussion can. You learn resilience, patience, focus, and vision. You learn how to navigate failure, how to adapt, how to lead. The process itself is a teacher, and the world responds to the results. You start to understand that creation is not about impressing others. It's about expressing truth, discipline, and intent in a way that only tangible work can communicate. Every time you build, you leave behind a piece of that truth. Every time you create, you move the needle, even if it's just a little, and you don't have to change the whole world all at once. The people who did had to start somewhere. They had to start small, start quietly, start imperfectly, but they started, and that start multiplied by persistence and vision became monumental. That's the power of being a builder. Every step, every effort, every single act of creation is a contribution to something bigger than yourself. It's how ordinary people become unforgettable, how ideas become movements, how dreams become reality. So if you want to leave a mark, if you want to shape your life, your community, or the world, you have to choose action over words. You have to choose to build. No matter how daunting it feels, no matter how many people doubt you, no matter how many obstacles lie in the way, because the future isn't written by talkers, it's written by the builders. So today, let this be your turning point. Let this be the moment you trade noise for action, intention for execution, and comfort for creation. The world doesn't need more talkers. It desperately needs more builders, those who shape ideas into realities and possibilities into landmarks. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Build. Don't talk and watch the world rise to meet the work of your hands.